Well, this certainly is unbelievable escalatory acts by Iran. It's unprecedented that Iran would be attacking Israel directly.
Mike Turner of Ohio is chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
But already we have seen through Iranian proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas have been undertaking attacks on Israel. October 7th, of course, Hamas's horrendous attack in Israel was funded by Iran. The weapons used were from Iran. The training used was from Iran. But this is absolutely an escalation that we're seeing in the area. I'm very concerned that the Biden administration fails to see that this regional conflict is expanding, as you have Iran, of course, funding the Houthis in Yemen, who are attacking commercial waterways. The Biden administration seems almost desensitized to this. We saw over 300 missiles and drones that were shot at Israel. The Biden administration seems to believe as long as you use missile defense to knock them down, the attack didn't happen. Well, the attack was real. It was intended to kill people in Israel, and I don't think Iran is going to stop.
The takeaway from President Biden seems to be he wants the Israelis to, quote, take the win. But we've heard from Israeli spokespeople that, of course, they're going to respond. Is this further evidence that the White House is not on the same page with our key allies in the Middle East?
I don't think that the Biden administration has a realistic view of the conflicts in the area. The missile defense, which we helped Israel develop missile defense jointly. And, of course, we used our missile defense, as did the UK, to try to aid them in thwarting this attack from Iran. But missile defense is supposed to be de-escalatory. It gives you the time and the space to determine what actions that you need to take. Mm-hmm. The Biden administration seems to think that missile defense in de-escalating actually means that there is no need for response. We've seen that when our troops were attacked over 100 times in Syria and Iraq. The Biden administration looked the other way, ultimately causing loss of life with U.S. service members in Jordan because the Biden administration was failing to respond, failing to try to diminish the capabilities of those who want to do us harm.
Iran has also said it will retaliate against those who help Israel. How worried are you about direct attacks by Iran on American forces in the region, given that American forces played a key role in shooting down a number of those drones?
Well, I'm always concerned about the safety of our troops, but I do believe that Iran is incredibly vulnerable here, both in the weapons production facilities that it used to make the cruise missiles and the drones that were fired at Israel, and the ones that they're giving to Russia that are showing up on the European battleground in Ukraine. Those are valid targets that would, of course, diminish the ability for Iran to provide weapons to the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and to attack Iran and to provide weapons to Russia and Ukraine. Also, their nuclear weapons aspirations, those are vulnerable to attack, and we should never allow Iran to become a nuclear state. I think Israel certainly has these on their target list. And also their oil production facilities, their export of weapon systems, their exports of oil, those also, too, have great vulnerabilities.
Majority Leader Steve Scalise says that the House legislative schedule will change next week to, quote, consider legislation that supports our ally Israel and holds Iran and its terrorist proxies accountable. Any sense of what that legislation could look like, sir?
Well, I think it would look like the package that has made its way already out of the Senate to a great extent, and that is providing additional missile defense capabilities, air defense systems for Israel, also looking to ensure that their F-35 systems are fully equipped and that they have weapons capable of being able to defend Israel. I think the number of capabilities that they already have as a result of cooperation with us really need to be just resupplied.
One sense I had over this weekend's events is this once again knocks Ukraine onto the back burner in terms of the world stage. What about support for Ukraine, and does this put Ukraine funding on the back burner once again?
Ukraine is at a critical point. I mean, it is very clear that Russia is poised to be able to make advances against Ukraine. and of course, in part using Iranian weapons. So these conflicts really are related in that you have, Russia and Iran working together, two authoritarian regimes attacking democratic nations. The speaker has made it clear that he would bring forward legislation to be able to provide the necessary defensive funding to Ukraine. And I believe we're to a point where that needs to occur. There will be, I believe, overwhelming support for a package for Ukraine on the House floor, just as there will be for Israel.
It struck me there was overwhelming support for Israel in the days after the October attacks by Hamas, but we've seen that soften from some of the folks on the progressive left. We've seen the president change in tone about Israel. How much of that is about domestic politics in a battleground state like Michigan, where there's a huge Arab American, Muslim American population? It
is very disheartening to see the White House weaken its overall support for Israel as they get critics who lean on the side of being anti-Israel. This goes to the basic values of democracy and standing up for our allies. The United States needs to stand strong for Israel.
Mr. Chairman, obviously there are a lot of complicated situations across the globe, including as we look at China and its ambitions toward Taiwan. What are you seeing there, and how alarmed are you by the potential threat by China against Taiwan?
Well, right now, I think we're seeing the greatest level of threats of conflicts around the world that we've seen in a long time. The fact that this administration has shown weakness, both in pulling out of Afghanistan, tolerating Iran's efforts in the Middle East, and and supporting Iran by giving them access to additional $6 billion in exchange for detainees. All of these are seen as a weak administration. Certainly, their weakness with respect to Russia and Ukraine, not fully standing up to Russia. And of course, that gives a signal to China, where China thinks, this may be an environment that the United States' weakness would benefit them.
Do you think China is looking at the situation in the Middle East, the situation in Ukraine, and thinking the United States is distracted, and so maybe they should go forward?
I don't think it's an issue of just distracted, because we certainly have the full capabilities. I think it's an issue of just weakness at the White House. John Kirby, in giving the White House response to this attack from Iran, was very weak. He said he did not indicate there were any red lines. He acted as if because we were able to defend against over 300 drones and missiles fired directly at Iran, we should just pretend as if nothing had happened. We are facing escalation because the White House continues to portray weakness.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, has become a bit of a political football here in Washington. Congress did reauthorize it with new reforms that were touted by former President Trump. What's the significance of the reauthorization, especially in a time where there are numerous foreign threats?
Absolutely. So FISA, the Foreign Surveillance Act, has within it a Section 702, which was expiring this year. 702 are provisions that are targeted toward collecting intelligence on foreigners abroad. It has to be both a foreigner and a person abroad. It's not Americans abroad. It's not foreigners here. It is foreigners abroad. This was still abused by the FBI. There were horrific abuses. So we put together a package of reforms that overwhelmingly passed the House to be able to put in place restrictions and real penalties, including criminal penalties on the FBI if they continue to violate the basic principles of intelligence of our targets, our foreigners abroad.
Obviously, some Americans worry about abuse, but you sound confident that the reforms will make sure there's not abuse of FISA against Americans both here and abroad.
We have included increased reporting requirements, oversight, and criminal penalties, which are severe. I believe that this is a reform package that's the most significant since FISA was first adopted. FISA having been adopted so that intended to protect Americans, we have now made it stronger, and I think it certainly will be something we're going to continue to monitor hold the FBI accountable to make certain that American civil liberties are protected.
He is the chairman of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Mike Turner of the great state of Ohio. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. I wish you a great week.
Thanks, Mike. You too.